There's no one-size-fits-all approach to creating a successful fundraising strategy and plan.
People are nervous, right? It's a big deal. We're raising $10 million, even if we're raising $1 or $3 million, depending on the size of the org.
Major gift fundraising is not deadline driven. It really is probably the only type of fundraising, along with planned giving, that is not deadline driven.
AI comes on the scene that's affordable, accessible, that can provide insights and personalization at scale.
That's the first core element of this fundraising engine or funnel, is making sure that the top of your funnel, the beginning of your fundraising process, you are in front of the right people.
What do the people we serve need? And how do we open the door to help them get there?
What happens a lot of times is we get this discomfort or this fear, and our brain tells our body to stop.
We can acquire donors and we can automate everything. And that's where I worry, at least personally, around the perils of AI, that it would remove humans from the interaction.
This is the Intentional Fundraiser podcast.
I want to start today with a sentence a donor said to one of my clients, because I haven't been able to shake it. This was a man who had given to the organization faithfully for 15 years. Reliable, generous, the kind of donor every development office is grateful for. And near the end of a long conversation, almost as an afterthought, he said, in all these years, nobody ever asked me what I thought. They just told me what they'd done.
Sit with that for a second. 15 years of giving. 15 years of gratitude, of thank you letters, of impact reports. And in all that time, not one person had turned to him and asked, "What do you see? What would you do? What are we missing?"
He wasn't angry when he said it. That's the part that got me. He'd simply, quietly concluded that his role was to write checks and the organization's role was to report back. He'd made peace with being a wallet, and the tragedy is he had so much more to offer, and nobody ever asked for it. I'm Tammy Zonker, and this is the Intentional Fundraiser podcast. Today we're talking about listening, specifically structured donor listening, and how the simple, almost radical act of genuinely asking your donors what they think can deepen trust, strengthen loyalty, and lead to some of the largest gifts you'll ever receive. Now, I know listening sounds soft. It sounds like the kind of thing you nod along to and then set aside when you get back to your actual pipeline and your actual metrics. So let me be clear about what I'm arguing today. I'm not saying listening is a nice thing to do. I'm saying it's a fundraising strategy, one of the most underused ones I know, and I want to show you how to build it on purpose.
Here's what's changed and why this matters more now than it did even a few years ago. In 2026, donors are asking for something different. They want transparency. They want a voice. They want to know that their perspective matters beyond the gift receipt. And most organizations, well-meaning ones, are responding to that hunger the only way they know how, which is by sending more reports, longer impact updates, prettier dashboards, glossier annual summaries, all of it thoughtful, and almost all of it flowing in one direction from you to them. The donors closest to your mission don't only want to hear from you. They want to be heard by you. And there's a real difference between those two things. So let me make the case for why listening belongs in your fundraising strategy, not just in your relationship building good intentions. Think about the last time someone asked for your genuine opinion on something they cared about. Not small talk, a real question, where they actually wanted to know what you thought, and then they got quiet and let you answer. How did that feel? For most of us, it feels like being taken seriously. It feels like mattering. And here's the thing about human beings. We invest more deeply in the things we feel ownership over. We protect what we've helped build. That's the psychology underneath donor listening. When you ask a major donor a real question, and then you actually listen, without rushing to defend or explain or steer them back to your talking points, you change the nature of the relationship. It stops being transactional. The donor stops being an audience for your work and starts becoming a partner in it. I've found over almost 30 years of doing this that the donors who feel genuinely consulted are the ones who stay. They stay through leadership transitions, they stay through a rough program year, they make the multi year commitments, they pick up the phone and introduce you to their friends, not because you asked them to, but because they feel like it's partly their organization now. They helped shape it. Compare that to the donor who only ever receives. Even a generous, loyal donor who only ever receives is, at some level, standing outside the work looking in. And a donor standing outside is a donor who can drift away when a shinier cause comes along or when the executive director they liked moves on. Let me give you a contrast. I worked with two organizations around the same time, both doing good work, both with solid major gift programs. The first one had a beautiful donor communications operation, stunning reports, timely thank yous, a real machine, but it was entirely one directional. Donors received and received and received. Their retention was fine, not great, and their largest donors plateaued at a certain level and stayed there for years. The second organization did something different. 2 or 3 times a year, they'd gather a small group of their closest donors, not to present to them, but to ask them, what are we missing? What do you see in the community that we don't? Where should we be braver? And those conversations changed things. Donors who had given at one level for years started stepping up because now it felt like their vision too. One of them funded an entire new initiative that came directly out of a question asked in one of those rooms. Same kind of donors, same quality of work. The difference was whether the organization treated its donors as an audience or as partners with something to say. And I want to connect this to something happening more broadly right now. Trust in institutions has been sliding for years, and donors feel that shift even when they can't name it. At the same time, more giving is flowing through donor-advised funds and family foundations, which means your major donors are thinking more like investors and less like check writers. They're asking harder questions about strategy and impact. A donor who thinks like an investor doesn't want a thank you card. They want a seat at the table, or at least a real conversation. Structured listening is how you meet that expectation before a donor has to go looking for it somewhere else. In a season where trust is scarce, being genuinely asked is one of the rarest and most powerful experiences you can offer a donor. Okay, so if listening is this powerful, how do you actually build it? I want to give you 2 concrete structures today: listening sessions and donor advisory councils, and then walk through how to design each one well, because the design is where most people go wrong. Let's start with the listening session. A listening session is a small group conversation, usually 5 to 8 donors, built around a few open questions instead of a presentation. The whole point is to draw people out, so a few design choices really matter. First, keep the group small and choose it thoughtfully. 5 to 8 donors who care about the same part of your work, big enough to have energy and cross-talk, small enough that every single voice fits in the room and nobody hides. Second, ask open questions, not leading ones. This is the one people get wrong most often. There's a world of difference between asking, "What do you see in our community that we might be missing?" and asking, "Don't you just love our new program?" The first invites honesty. The second invites a polite yes and tells you nothing. If your questions are secretly just compliments you're fishing for, donors will feel it, and they'll give you the nice answer instead of the true one. Third, let a neutral facilitator run the room. Ideally, someone who isn't the same person who's going to make the ask later. When the fundraiser runs the session, donors can feel a subtle pressure, a sense that their answers are being scored.
When a neutral facilitator runs it, people relax and say what they really think. Fourth, and this is the hardest one for us fundraisers, talk less than you think you should. Your job in that room is not to fill silences or explain your programs. Your job is to ask a good question, then get comfortable with the pause that follows and take notes while your donors do the talking. The silence you're tempted to fill is usually the exact moment a donor is deciding whether to say the honest thing. Now, let's talk about the Donor Advisory Council, which is the more structured cousin of the listening session. A Donor Advisory Council is a standing group of committed donors who meet on a regular cadence to offer perspective on a specific part of your work. The most important word in that phrase is advisory. This is not a board. It doesn't govern, it doesn't set policy, it doesn't have authority over your budget. And you have to be crystal clear about that from day one, or you'll create confusion and honestly some anxiety among your staff. Here's how I'd structure one. Keep it small, 6 to 10 people. Give it a defined scope, a specific program you're growing, or a campaign you're shaping, so the conversations have focus. Meet on a real cadence 2 to 4 times a year, so it feels like a genuine commitment and not a one-off. And be honest, out loud about what you're asking for, which is counsel and insight, not oversight. I want to name the trap here because I've seen it sink more than one council. A donor advisory council built for action deepens loyalty. A council built for show erodes it. Donors are sophisticated people. They can tell the difference between being genuinely consulted and being handed a title and a nice lunch, so they'll feel important and keep giving. If you convene a council and then never act on anything they say, you haven't strengthened those relationships. You've quietly damaged them. So don't start a council you're not prepared to actually listen to. Which brings me to what I think is the most important part of today, because it's the part almost everyone skips. Listening only builds trust. If the listening goes somewhere, if you gather all this beautiful donor input and then it sits in a notebook and nothing ever changes, you've actually made things worse, because now the donor has been asked and then ignored, which stings more than never being asked at all. So let's talk about how you turn what you hear into decisions donors can see. First, capture the themes while they're fresh. Right after a session, before you get pulled into your next meeting, write down what you heard. Then, across multiple sessions and conversations, look for patterns. What keeps coming up? What question do 3 different donors ask in 3 different ways? This is one place where artificial intelligence genuinely earns its keep. You can take your rough notes from several listening sessions, feed them into an AI assistant, and ask it to surface the recurring themes and questions across all of them. It'll do in a few minutes what would take you an evening of squinting at legal pads. And to be clear, the AI isn't deciding anything. It's just clearing away the busy work so your time goes to the part only you can do, which is discerning what actually matters and what you're going to do about it. The listening stays human. The transcribing doesn't have to be. Second, choose 1 or 2 things you can realistically act on, and act on them. You will not be able to do everything your donors suggest, and you shouldn't try. But you can pick the 1 or 2 ideas that align with where you're already going and move on them visibly. And third, close the loop. This is the whole ballgame. Go back to the donors who spoke up and show them what changed, because they did. You told us this. Here's what we did about it. That single sentence is worth more than a year of glossy reports, because it proves the thing donors most want to believe, that their voice actually moved something. I worked with a development director who started ending every listening cycle with what she called a "you said, we did" note to the participants, short, specific, honest. Sometimes it was, "You said we should tell more stories from the families themselves, so here's the new video series." Sometimes it was, "You raised a concern about staff burnout, and here's the step we're taking." Her donors started replying to those notes with things like, "I've never had an organization actually do this."
And her major gift revenue from that group climbed, not because she asked for more, but because she'd shown them their input had weight. So let's bring this together. Donor listening isn't a soft nicety. It's a strategy. When you genuinely ask your donors what they think, and then you show them you heard, you turn an audience into partners, and partners give differently than audiences do. You can build this through listening sessions, small groups of 5 to 8 donors around open questions, run by a neutral facilitator where you talk less than you want to. You can build it through donor advisory councils, standing groups of 6 to 10 who meet a few times a year to advise on a specific part of your work, as long as you remember that advisory means action, not theater. And whatever you gather, you capture the themes, you act on 1 or 2 things, and you close the loop by showing donors what changed because they spoke up. Here's your challenge this week, and it's a simple one. Draft 1 listening touch point. Just 1. It could be a small group session. It could be the first meeting of a council, or it could be a one-on-one listening series with a handful of your closest donors. Write down 3 open questions you genuinely want their answers to. Then, before you invite a single person, decide how you'll close the loop, how you'll show them what changed. And if you do nothing else, try asking 1 major donor this week the question I opened with. What do you see that we're not seeing? Then get quiet and listen to what happens. Keep transforming your fundraising so you can transform the world.
The Intentional Fundraiser podcast is a Fundraising Transformed original. I'm Trent Thompson, executive producer, CMO, and head of community at Fundraising Transformed and the Modern Institute for Charitable Giving. The Intentional Fundraiser podcast has been recognized by FeedSpot as one of the top 80 fundraising podcasts on the web. This recognition means so much to us, and it wouldn't be possible without your incredible support, encouragement, and thoughtful engagement. Every listen, share, and conversation has helped us grow and reach more passionate fundraisers like you. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to review and rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, and be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen. For resources mentioned in this episode and to subscribe to our Scaling Major Gifts newsletter, visit fundraisingtransformed.com.